Well, we're still in our story series this morning, and I wanted to start this morning by telling you a little quick story from my high school days. My best friend in high school's uncle had a dairy farm, and he would bring the cows into this dairy farm, and they put their head into a feed trough where they would eat while he extracted the milk. And he got to noticing he had this huge room, probably as big as this section, and a big truck would come in and it would dump the feed down in this room. There's this massive pyramid of feed that he would scoop out of and go put in those troughs for the cows. And he got to noticing, hey, the cows aren't eating the feed. And he would look in the feed room and he could see where some animals had scratched around. He thought maybe it was rats or something. But he said, the cows aren't eating the feed and it kind of smells bad. And he told me, told my buddy, he said, Andy, can you and Todd go over there and check that feed room and see what's going on with it? He said, you're going to have to go at night because I'm there in the day and I don't see anything. So we got our investigative equipment on, got our Q-beams, and so we went up to this feed room. We had to sneak up. We said, okay, don't turn lights on. We're going to sneak up to this room, and it's a double door opening to it. So walked in where the cows were normally. There was quiet in the barn where the cows were being milked. And so we walked up in here and we said, okay, each of us grab a double door and we're going to count to three. We count to three. We're going to throw those doors open and we're going to turn these big, massive Q-beam spotlights. We're going to hit those on. So 1, 2, 3. Boom, we threw it open, jumped into that opening with our lights, and there must have been 50 skunks in this room. Skunks went everywhere. I don't know if you've ever surprised a skunk. Skunks are aggressive. There was like 4 right at us, and they were like, they were jumping at us with their tails over their back, and there was a fog of yellow. It was not pleasant. We carried that battle for a minute. They wanted a battle. We wanted to run. And that's exactly what we did. We ran. I don't know about you, but I found out in life some battles are easy to run from, like skunks. And some battles aren't so easy. Some battles show up in the deepest parts of who you and I are. Some battles threaten our families. They threaten our futures. They threaten our faith. Those are spiritual battles. And most of us spend a lot of time, if you're like me, you spend a lot of time praying, God, take the battle away. I don't want to fight this no more. Give me peace. I want to move on. I'm tired of fighting. But the question I want to ask this morning, the question that I've wrestled with, I want to ask you to wrestle with. What if all battles are not meant to be escaped? What if some are meant to be fought? What if all battles are not meant to be escaped because not all battles come from the same place? Some battles, if you're walking through life, are just because of a fallen world, right? You get the diagnosis, you have the accident, you're in the wreck, tragedy strikes. It's just part of life, right? And sadly, we're left to fight those battles, the aftermath of those battles. And God's with us, and He's for us, and He fights with us and for us. And then there's some battles that are self-inflicted. Oh, Lord. How many of you guys ever fought a battle that you caused because of your poor decisions? I remember in 8th grade, I'm telling all these, I guess I'm getting old reminiscing. But I was in 8th grade and went to a little high school, so you knew everybody there. We had assigned seats in my homeroom. So I walked up in my homeroom, and there's this little redhead, freckly dude sitting in my seat. I'd never seen him before. We're 3 weeks into school. I've never seen this guy. I know everybody in that school. I've never seen him. And I walk up, and he's in my seat, and that's my favorite seat because there's a little blonde sitting here beside me. I spend half of my time flirting with her, so that's my seat. And so I said, dude, you got to get out of my seat. He said, I ain't getting out of this seat. You make me. Well, you know, blood went to the top of my head. I picked the seat up, and I dumped him out because, like I said, he's a little guy. He's a little guy. I know. Don't act like that, kids. Don't act like that. That's dumb. I'll show you why you're not supposed to act like that. He jumped up, and he bowed up to me, stuck his chest out. He said, push me. I should have known something when the little guy just bows up and says, push me. About that time, the teacher walked in. The teacher's like, calm down. And he let that guy sit in my seat. He said, he's new here. You know what his name was? I forgot to say this. His name was Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown was sitting in my seat. He looked like Charlie Brown. But anyway, I had to go to the back. He let him sit in my seat, and I had to go to the back, and I was sold up because he's sitting by my girl up there. So after class, it was hot, man. August in Louisiana is hot. So a lot of kids were lined up in the hallway out there and waiting for the water fountain. And I saw him up, about a quarter of the way back. Kids, don't do this. This is mean and ugly. I was a different person back then. I learned quick, though. I walked up, and I stuck my elbow in him and stood right in front of him in line. And about that time, he pushed me back out of line. And when I went to push him, I think it was simultaneous when my hands laid on him. Pap, pap, pap. He hit me 3 times. I swung. All these kids, that little girl watching. I swung. A big roundhouse swing. And he hit me from over here. I swung. Bap, bap, bap. He hit me. So I threw a left this way. Bap, bap, bap. He worked me all up and down that hall. Charlie Brown. Oh, everybody watching like, big. I was pretty tall. I could stand on a power line and be in the shade, but I was skinny, but he was little. He whooped me. I said the first service, I let him sit in my seat after that. It was good. My head was throbbing. That's an 8th grade example of some of the battles that we get ourselves in as adults. Some of those battles that we get ourselves in, God is just like, I believe they bring tears to his eyes, y'all. Because he sees us struggling through the consequences of getting beat up. Because things we started, fights we picked, choices we made, yes. But, okay, we've got a couple of battles. Battles that happen through life, battles that happen because of our poor choices or self-inflicted. But there are battles that come sometimes in life, not because you've disobeyed God, but because you're obeying him, because you're walking with him, because you're doing everything that he said you should do. Battles that come because you're exactly where God wants you, going exactly where God said go. Joshua was such a man, faithfully following and obeying God. I want to take a look at Joshua leading God's people in this story into the promised land. As we take a look at this, you guys remember, Ron mentioned it a couple weeks ago. There were 12 spies. 10 of those spies came back talking about giants and talking about how small we are. We look like grasshoppers in their eyes. And then Joshua and Caleb said, yeah, they're big, but we can take them because God's on our side. The people wouldn't believe Joshua and Caleb, though. They wouldn't believe that God was able, and so they began to grumble and complain. We can't take them. And it turned that unbelief turned an 11-day journey into 40 years in the wilderness. 40 years. A generation had passed, the 40 years is over, and finally, Moses is dead. Moses is dead. Moses has passed away, and Joshua, the next in command, steps up, and finally, it's time to lead God's people out of the wilderness into their inheritance, into the land God had promised them. And before Joshua takes his first step, God says something to me that like was a little strange to me. He said, you need to be strong, Christy, and you need to be courageous. He said that over and over. Then he said, you need to be strong and very courageous. If you're walking into the promised land, if you're walking into the place that God has for you, obedient, why do you have to be strong and courageous? Shouldn't obedience make it easy, make the journey easy? Shouldn't it make it smooth? Whew, I wish. Whew. Here's a takeaway for you. God's promises are not without perils. You see, perils are dangers, risks, hardships that threaten to keep you and I and Joshua and God's people from God's promises and God's purpose. They don't guarantee an easy street. God's walking faithfully with God doesn't guarantee an easy street. Every step of the way toward the place that God had promised Joshua, there's an enemy rising up. Oh, man. So what happened? They started walking into the promised land. They defeated Jericho, as Ron said 2 weeks ago. Defeated Jericho, rescued Rahab. It was a sound defeat. And then they walked to this little city called Ai. Ai is the way it's spelled. And so they walked to this city and they learned a major lesson in obedience. If you remember the story, they got their tails whooped and they got run off. But then they repented and they went back and God gave them this city. And then they marched into the northern territory, and that's where I want to take up our story. As they walked into the northern territory, this enemy king said, oh no, I don't want y'all walking up in here. I done seen what your God can do, but we're going to take you down. And so this enemy king named Jabin organized and led a coalition against Joshua and God's people. He recruited. Listen to who he recruited. I started to say I read this. First name's King Jabab. You know, reminds me of Joe Bob down south. You get Joe Bob fighting for you, he's a banger, y'all. You know, I mean, he throw hands with the best of them. So he recruited. That's free. So he recruited. Get that out. He recruited King Jobab, King Shimron, the King Ashaph, Amorite kings, Hittite kings, Perizzite kings, Jebusite kings, Hivite kings. It says a vast army as many as the sands of the seashore, came forth from every direction, north, south, east, and west. You ever walk down the beach and look at the sand on the seashore? It's just a white for miles. That's what these enemies look like. White for, just enemy for miles. But they were there to shut down the progress. And not only to shut down progress, but to defeat God's people. Now, this is a story of Joshua, but I want you to listen to this. This is a story of us. This is a story of us also, because God's called us to move forward, to take new ground, to grow, to learn, to live, to walk into those promises that he has for us, to be everything that he's called us to be. And every step of the way. Have you noticed that? Am I alone? Am I preaching? I done preached to myself several times, but am I preaching to myself this morning? Every step of the way, enemies are rising up against us, trying to shut down our progress, trying to make sure you don't walk into the inheritance God has for you. 9 or 10 or 8 or 9 years ago, we had in Louisiana, had a 100-acre poultry farm. And we grew, it was a big poultry farm. We grew about 1 million chickens a year. Every year. Just for 30 years we did this. And then this company came and said, the company we grew for came and said, hey, I want you to do a major upgrade. It's going to be $1 million upgrade. And for years, you climb out of this financial hole, and they make you do an upgrade, and you fall back down. You climb, and we were close to paying this farm off. And we were unsettled about that. We said, I don't think this is God's will. So we prayed, me and Angela, my wife, here on the front row, we prayed and we fasted. And finally, we were convinced God has different plans for us, Ron. I mean, plans that don't include growing chickens. Plans that, who knows, we were so excited. God's going to throw doors open. I mean, we're going to walk into our future. I mean, he's going to have all the provision we need. That was our source of income. He's going to have every provision we need. I mean, we're going to do, big time ministry is going to be awesome. And for 8 years, we faced opposition. I wish I could tell you, we're doing good now, but we're still facing opposition. We're still fighting some of those battles. I don't know about you guys. I mean, nothing has come about that I thought would happen. Completely different. We've walked through heartache, heartbreak. We've walked through son-in-laws passing away because of 8th grade fights they picked as an adult. I mean, we've walked through so much. But have you ever been disappointed and frustrated with us? Like us? Not with us. Have you ever been frustrated and disappointed about how your life is going? You say, God, I'm walking in faith and obedience with you, believing that you are going before me, that you are fighting with me. And as we look up, oh boy, here's another enemy coming. God, did I miss something? Maybe I'm the only one that ever felt that. Did I misunderstand your voice? I tell everybody, I don't hear very well. That's true. I try to wear hearing aids, but they just do everything. So I don't have those on. So sometimes when I'm in a conversation, people are talking, and I'm like leaning in. And as I lean in, they lean out. I'm not trying to get up in your space. I'm just trying to hear. And so my prayer has also been that all of us would lean in to God. Because the voice you hear is the one closest to your ear, right? And so, God, did I miss something? I thought you said go. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to open doors for you. I'm going to destroy your enemy. But where are you, God? Where are you? Do you see what's happening? Do you see all the enemy that's coming against me? I mean, I didn't think following you would be this uncertain. I didn't think it would be this intimidating. I didn't think it would be this scary. Let's just call it like it is. Sometimes it's scary walking with God. God, why is this so hard? Why are enemies surrounding me? Why does the battle rage all around me, all up in me? Why? Why all these battles, God? And Joshua was human, so he must have laid eyes on that army, that vast army that was threatening to take him down, to destroy God's people, and say, God, why all these battles? We're walking with you, God. And then I read Joshua 11:20. Listen to this. It says, for it was of the Lord to harden the enemy's hearts, that they should come against Israel in battle. Wait, what did that say? For it was of the Lord? Of the Lord? Wait a minute. Who sent the battle? Who sent the battle? God, you're behind this? I mean, I thought we were ride or die, God. I thought it was going to be easy. I mean, I thought when I walked into the promises you have for me that the enemy would wave the white flag. That come on in, boy, we strut on in, with God, and just take that possession, take the promise that God's given us. But God, you hardened their hearts. God, you made them rise. You made them angry. You made them rise up against me. You made them try to destroy me. Why would you do that, God? And then I read the second half of that verse 20. The first half, for it was of the Lord to harden their hearts, that they should come against Israel in battle. Listen to this. That he, Joshua, might utterly destroy them, and that they might receive no mercy, but that he might destroy them as the Lord had commanded Moses. Here's the question. Why is it so important to destroy your enemy? Why is it so important that God would allow it, and not just allow it, he would initiate it? And I think I have the answer. God knew something that Joshua didn't know. And he knows something that we don't know. That if you don't completely destroy your enemy has a lingering potential to destroy you. Do you hear that? I'm not talking about Joshua, I'm talking about us. If we don't completely destroy our enemy has the lingering potential to grow, to get bigger and come back and completely destroy us. You see, these enemies that Joshua faced belonged to the kingdom of darkness. Those enemies were walking in the kingdom of darkness. And if they weren't completely destroyed, they would grab God's people out of the kingdom of light, pull them over into the kingdom of darkness, where there was all sorts of pagan worship and evil practices that would hurt those that God loved. And I'm telling you, that hurts a papa's heart. It's God's heart. It's his love for us is the reason that he engages the battle with us. You see, Joshua's enemies were flesh and blood. Ours are as dangerous. Has anybody fought a battle with anxiety or fear? Has anybody fought a battle with addiction? Has anybody fought a battle with lust, hopelessness, depression, bitterness, offense, pride, division, unforgiveness, disappointment? Those are the battles we fight. That's the enemies we face. Each of these are designed and assigned to take us out. Listen. These enemies that come against us are not for us to coexist with, but they are for us to conquer. They're not for us to cohabitate with, but to completely, utterly destroy. God's policy. It sounds harsh, but it's God's heart. It's God's Father's heart for us. Leave no trace. Leave no trace of lust. Leave no trace of fear. Leave no trace of pride. Leave no trace of envy. Leave no trace of unbelief. What is it? God said, what's your enemy? God said, leave no trace. He said, fight not just until you get the upper hand, but until you destroy them. Ron preached a few weeks ago in the Kingdom of Heaven series, and he talked about a little bit of leaven. And when you put a little bit of yeast into a little bit of leaven into the lump, it begins to grow. It gets to get bigger and bigger, and it affects everything around you. Years ago, when we were first married, I was out just exploring by a bayou, and I found 2 little alligators in Louisiana. 2 little bitty alligators. I thought they were cute. So I grabbed them. I took them home. I called them Crunch and Munch. They're some bad little boys. And I got a little swimming pool, and I put outside, and I put Crunch and Munch in them swimming pools. I started to feed them. It wasn't long till I needed one of them big old like a water trough, big old round, so I kept them in that, and I fed them, and they grew, and I fed them, and they kept getting stockier and bigger, and man, when I would come out there, boy, they'd come running over there, and they were aggressive. In fact, I have a scar on my finger right here from one of them. Bit me, and my wife one day said, Todd, you got to get rid of them. They're going to eat our kids. Think about that in the context of what I'm preaching. I said, touche, and I got rid of them. Little alligators grow up to be big alligators. Little enemies that aren't destroyed grow up to be big enemies. Come on, somebody. Little compromises become addictions. Little pride becomes poison. Little fears become prisons. Little lusts become flames of dark desire. Little, what is it you're leaving? It grows. The enemies you don't defeat will lurk in the shadows of your life, gaining strength, and we will be a constant threat to your future and your families. If you read through Joshua into Judges, you're going to find out that the enemies you don't defeat, your kids are going to have to fight. Whew. I don't want my kids having to fight enemies that I refuse to engage with, that I refuse to defeat. But I hear, God, I'm so tired. I hear it. I hear it in me. I'm so tired of fighting the enemies over and over and over and over. Well, here's some encouragement. Joshua 11:18. Joshua waged war a long time with these enemies. There were several battles, and the battles were long and tiring. But with God by their side, because they chose to obey and chose to engage this enemy, that eventually they utterly destroyed their enemies in the northern territory so that their enemies couldn't rise back up and destroy them. Even with God on their side, it was a process, Ron. But it was God using this process to turn weaklings into warriors, teaching them how to engage in battle, teaching them how to walk in victory. But they had to fight. So I want to say this to you guys. If you're in a fight, if you're engaging the enemy, if you are fighting and you are trying your best, as Ron said earlier, you're doing better than you think you are. That's what God asked. It's His strength that stands up in us as we fight. And He is going to ensure the victory. He said He went before them. He's already there with the enemies we're facing. You're destined to fight and you're destined to win. But you cannot win without a war. I'm going to say this morning, don't you get weary in the fight. In the fight, don't you give up. God's for you. If you're fighting, keep fighting. You're doing good. God wants us to walk in complete freedom. How do you walk in freedom from every enemy that rises up against you? How do you protect your family and your future from those enemies? You do like God said to Joshua, Matt, you be strong and you be courageous. You be strong and very courageous. When the enemy comes up against you, you square your shoulders and you smack him in the mouth. You fight. You don't run from enemies that come against you. You fight. That's how you walk in freedom, because God is fighting with and for you. It's the strength of the Lord on your side when you choose to fight. You keep worshiping. You keep surrendering. You keep praising. You keep praying. You keep reading. You get that word up inside of you. Let it renew your mind. I mean, if you fall down, you get back up and you run back to Jesus. Run back to Jesus and you stay close to Him. And you determine to grow even if it's slow. And don't you dare quit. And if Carissa would please join me. I want you guys to pay attention. If you haven't paid attention, I want you to look at me. If you haven't paid attention up to this point, I've spent a good section of time encouraging you in the battles you fight. Encouraging you as you fight battles that God's with you and God's for you. Don't you quit. But I don't have a poem this morning. But what I do have is a warning. It's a warning that I believe is from God's heart. Do you remember Joshua? He's like us. He grew old. And as he grew, what he noticed was the northern territory, they annihilated their enemies, but there were other territories where they let the enemies, a remnant of the enemy, stay in the land. He said, this can turn out real bad. And so what he did, he gave us this warning in Joshua 23, 12, and 13. He says this. He said, if you ever turn away, he brought all the leaders in. He brought all the people in. And he told them this. He said, if you ever turn away and become loyal to the rest of these nations remaining among you, if you intermarry or if you associate, if you mingle with them and they with you, know for certain that the Lord your God will not continue to drive out these nations, will not drive out your enemies from before you. They will, listen, they will become a snare and a trap for you and your family. They will be sharp sticks for your sides and thorns in your eyes until you disappear from this good land the Lord has given you. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Read through Judges. Read through Judges. Listen. You got to hear this. If you're battling, keep it up. You're doing good. The danger, listen, you got to hear this. The danger isn't in the enemy you fight. The danger's in the enemy you make peace with. It's the danger lurking in the dark places of your life that you've made peace with. How do you know you're in danger? How do you know you're in danger of defeat? When you're friends with, when you make peace with enemies God told you to destroy. What about you this morning? Is there something you know that's an enemy that God said get rid of, and God said destroy in your life? Is there something you have quit fighting and started coexisting with that is displeasing to God? It's not a game. We're not in a game. Not trying to be heavy, but lives depend on these decisions to engage our enemy. You cannot toy or play with the things God said to stay away from. The things that God said to drive out and destroy. Worship team, if you guys would come. That statement's worth repeating that I said earlier. How do you know you're in danger? Are you hearing me? How do you know you're in danger? When you're friends, when you're comfortable with, when you embrace things God told you to destroy.